Chapter 6 of Book 10 of Metaphysics by Aristotle, translated by John McMahon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jeffrey Edwards. Chapter 6. But, similar to the statements that have been just made, is that which has been asserted by Protagoras. For, likewise, he said that man is a measure of all things, in this way affirming nothing else than that what appeared to every man, that this also, indubitably, is that which it appeared to be. If, however, this is admitted, the same thing will happen to be and not be, and to be both evil and good, and the rest of those things that are expressed in accordance with opposite assertions, from the fact that frequently to some persons indeed this particular thing appears to be fair, and the contrary to others, and from that which is apparent to every one constituting a measure. Now, this doubt would be resolved if persons considered whence the origin of this supposition has been derived. For to some speculators, no doubt, it would appear to have originated from the opinion of the physiologists or natural philosophers, but to others, from the circumstance that all men do not possess the same points of knowledge in respect of the same subjects, but that to some this particular thing seems to be sweet, and to others the contrary. For that nothing is generated from non-entity, but everything from entity, is almost a commonly received dogma amongst all natural philosophers. Since, therefore, that which is not white is generated from that which is perfectly white, and by no means not white, supposing now that what is not white has been generated from that which is not a white entity, that which is being generated as not white would be produced. Wherefore, such would be generated from non-entity, according to their doctrine, unless that which is not white were the same with that which is white. It would not, however, be difficult to decide this doubt, for it has been declared in our treatise on physics in what manner from that which is non-entity are generated the things that are being produced, and how it is that they are generated from entity. Notwithstanding the giving heed in like manner to both opinions and to the fanciful statements of persons who doubt in opposition to themselves, this would be a silly proceeding, for it is evident that one party amongst these sceptics must needs labour under fallacies. And this statement is manifest from observing things that are generated according to sense. For at no time does the same thing appear to some indeed sweet, and to others the contrary, provided that the organ which has the power of perceiving and deciding the above enumerated tastes has not undergone any corruption and injury in the case of these others. But on the understanding of such a state of things as this, we may suppose that some of them are a standard of measure, and suppose that others are not so. And in like manner I assert this to be the case as regards both what is good and evil, and what is beautiful and disgraceful, and other things of the sort. For to lay down this as a principle, or to affirm the reality of nothing save the apparent, is a course nowise different from those who place their finger beneath the organ of vision, and thus from the one object make two to appear, and who really believe that there are two objects before them on account of their appearing such, and again that there is but one in reality. For to those persons who do not move their organ of vision, that which is one appears one. In general, however, it would be absurd, from the appearance of things that are here as subject to change, and which never permanently continue in the same dispositions, from this to come to any decision as regards truth. For it is necessary that we should go in pursuit of that which is true from amongst those things that invariably do subsist according to the same dispositions, and that never are instrumental in bringing about their own change. Now, of this description are those bodies that are regulated according to the orderly system of the universe. For these do not at one time appear of this particular sort, but at another time of a different kind, but invariably the same, and as participating in no change. But, further, on the supposition of the existence of motion, and of something that is being moved, now everything which has motion impressed upon it is put in motion by something, and in the direction of something. In such a case, that which is being moved ought to be found, moreover, in that from which it will derive its motion, and yet not be found therein, and that it should be moved towards this particular place, and yet should not be generated in this. But how can such be the case? For we must bear in mind that even according to their own doctrines, that simultaneous verification is not possible as regards contradiction. And if, according to quantity, things which are here are continuously in a state of flux, and are being moved, and if one admits this, although it should not be true, why are they not permanent as regards quality? For these speculators in no small degree appear to predicate those things of the same thing, according to their contradictions, from the supposition that quantity does not continue permanently in bodies. Hence, with them the same thing is, and is not of 4 cubits in its dimensions. Substance, however, subsists according to quality, for this is of a definite nature, but quantity belongs to one which is indefinite. Further, why, let me ask, when the physician gives a prescription that his patients should take this particular food, why, I say, do they take it? For why is this particular piece of food bread rather than it is not bread? Wherefore, there would be no distinction in eating from not eating. At present, however, as the physician makes a true assertion about this thing, and this food that has been prescribed being in reality in existence, the patients accordingly take this food, although they ought not, at least, to do so on the supposition that there is no nature that is firmly permanent in sensibles, but that invariably all things are in motion and in a state of flux. But further, if indeed we are always undergoing a change, and never remaining permanently the same persons, why is it surprising if things never appear at any time to be the same as they do to those that are sick? For to these also, on account of their habit being not similarly disposed, as when they are in a healthy state, the things that subsist according to the senses do not appear to subsist in a similar manner. Those sensibles themselves participate in no change on account of this, at least, but produce different sensations in the sick, and sensations that are not the same. In the same manner, therefore, is it requisite, perhaps, that consequences be disposed as if the aforesaid change took place. If, however, we do not undergo a change, but continue to be the same, there would be something in existence that is permanent. Respecting, to be sure, those persons, therefore, who entertain from principles of reason the doubts enumerated, it would not be easy to advance a refutation when they are not for admitting anything, and no longer demand a reason of those things. For all reasoning and every demonstration arise in this way. For when they are disposed to admit nothing, they overturn the thing in dispute, and, in general, all rational discussion. Wherefore, with such speculators, of course, there is no such thing at all as rational discussion. But in regard of those that labour under perplexity, from the doubts that have been handed down, it would be easy to reply, and to unravel the difficulties that create in them the doubt referred to. Now, this statement is evident from those that have been made. Wherefore, it is evident from these things that it does not admit of being possible that opposite assertions about the same thing should be verified at one and the same time, nor that contraries should, on account of the denomination of all contrariety, according to privation. This, however, will be evident to those who resolve into their first principles the definitions of contraries. And, in like manner, neither is it possible that any of those things that are media should be predicated of one and the same thing. For, on the supposition of the subject being white, when we assert that this is neither white nor black, we shall make a false assertion, for it happens that this is white, and yet that it is not. For either of these connected together will be verified concerning this, but this amounts to a contradiction of what is white. Neither, therefore, is it possible for one who makes an assertion in accordance with the theory of Heraclitus, nor of Anaxagoras, to assert what is true. And if this be not admitted, the consequence will ensue that they predicate contrary things of the same subject. For when Anaxagoras says that in everything is contained a part of everything, he says that a thing is not more sweet than bitter, or anything else of the other contrarieties, if in everything all things subsist not merely in potentiality, but in energy or activity, and in a state of separation. And in like manner, neither is it possible that all assertions be false, nor all true, as well on account of many other difficulties which would be uttered in consequence of this position, as also because, as regards all assertions, supposing that they are false, neither will one who makes this very assertion speak what is true. But if all assertions are true, the person who says that all are false will not speak falsely. Chapter 7. But every science investigates into certain first principles and causes respecting each of those objects of knowledge that fall under its cognizance, as, for example, medicinal science, and that of the athlete, and each of the rest of the productive or the mathematical sciences. For each of these, having been for itself descriptive of a certain genus, treats concerning this as a thing existing, and as an entity, not, however, so far forth as it is an entity. Conversant, however, about this last named inquiry, is there, beside these sciences, this certain other science of the ontologist, which is different from them. But each of the above enumerated sciences, taking for granted the mode in which the nature of a thing subsists in each genus, endeavours to explain the remainder of the points relating to this more feebly or more accurately. They, however, make an assumption as to quiddity or the nature of a thing, some of them by means of sense, but others from hypothesis. Wherefore, it is also evident, from an induction of this sort, that there subsists no demonstration of substance and quiddity. Since, however, there exists a certain science which is conversant about nature, it is manifest that it will be different from both that which is practical science and that which is productive or effective. For of productive science the first principle of motion resides in the producing or efficient cause, and not in that which is being produced, and this either is some art or some other potentiality. And in like manner does the case stand with practical science also. The motion does not reside in the thing done, but rather in those who are agents. But the science of the natural philosopher is conversant about those bodies that involve in themselves a first principle of motion. That indeed, therefore, physical science must needs be neither practical nor productive, but speculative or contemplative, is evident from these statements. For there is the necessity of its falling under the classification of some one of these genera, and since in a manner it is requisite for each of the sciences to possess a knowledge of the nature of a thing, and to employ this as a first principle, we ought not to forget how a definition of this quiddity should be framed by the physical inquirer, and how the definition of substance is to be assumed, whether as the flat nose, or rather as the hollow. For, as regards these, the formal principle, no doubt, of flat nose is denominated along with matter, I mean, such as belongs to the thing itself. The formal principle, however, of hollow nose is expressed without matter, for flatness of nose is generated in the nose. Wherefore also the definition, or formal principle, of it is inquired into along with this, for the flat nose constitutes a hollow nose. It is evident, therefore, that the definition both of flesh, and of the eye, and of the other parts of the body is always to be assumed along with matter. But since there exists a certain science of entity, so far forth as it is entity, and so far forth as it involves a separable subsistence, we must examine whether at all we are to consider this to be the same with natural or physical science, or rather to be different from it. Physical science indeed, then, is conversant about those bodies that involve in themselves a first principle of motion. But the science of the mathematician is itself a certain science that is speculative, I admit, and that, too, in regard of things that are permanent, but which do not involve a subsistence separable from sensibles. Respecting, then, that which is an entity capable of separate subsistence, and which is immovable, there exists a certain science different from both of these, on the supposition, of course, that there is some substance of this description in existence. Now, I speak of a substance separable and immovable, and it is the validity of this very position that we shall attempt to demonstrate. And if we admit that there subsists any substance of this sort in entities, here also, in a manner, would there be found divinity residing, and this would be an original and most dominant principle. It is evident, therefore, that there are three genera of the speculative sciences, namely, the physical or natural, the mathematical, and the theological. The most excellent, then, is certainly the genus of the speculative or contemplative sciences, and of these very sciences, that one which is mentioned last of the three possesses the greatest amount of excellence, for it is conversant about that one amongst entities which is more entitled to respect than the rest. Each science, however, is termed more excellent and more inferior according to its appropriate object of scientific knowledge. Now, a person might raise the question as to whether at all we ought to seek to establish universally the science of entity, so far forth as it is entity, or not. For each of the mathematical sciences, no doubt, is conversant about some one definite genus. The universal science, however, speculates in common respecting all things. If indeed, therefore, we admit physical substances to be the primary substances of entities, physical or natural science would also be the chief one amongst the sciences. But, on the other hand, if there exists a nature that is different, and a substance that involves a separable subsistence, and is immovable, it is necessary also that there belong to this a different science, and that this science should be antecedent to physical science, and universal in respect of its antecedence or priority. Chapter 8. Since, however, that which is entity simply considered is denominated in many ways, of which one is that which is spoken of as subsisting according to accident, in the first instance our examination must be instituted concerning entity in this point of view. That indeed, therefore, no one of the sciences that have been handed down from former generations is employed about what is accidental is evident. For neither does that relating to house building or architectural art investigate into what is likely to be accidental with those who will make use of the house, for example, as to whether they will dwell there sorrowfully, or the contrary. Nor is it so with the art of weaving, nor of shoemaking, nor the cooking art. Each of these sciences, however, examines into that which is peculiar to its own department only, and this is its appropriate end. Neither does it consider a person so far as he is a musician and a grammarian, nor does it assert that he who is a musician, should he become a grammarian, will at the same time be both, though he were not so previously. But that which is not always an entity, this was generated at some time or other, so that such a person would at the same time become a musician and a grammarian. This, however, no one of those that are confessedly sciences examines into, with the exception of the science of the sophist, for this alone is employed about what is accidental. Wherefore Plato has not inaptly expressed himself when he affirms that the sophist wastes his time in the consideration of nonentity, but that it is not a thing that is admissible that there should be in existence a science of the accidental will be manifest to those who attempt to discern what an accident is at all. Therefore, as regards everything, we affirm one thing indeed to subsist always, and from necessity. Now, I mean by necessity, not that which is denominated according to what is violent, but what we employ in cases pertaining to demonstrations. But another thing we affirm as subsisting for the most part, and another neither as for the most part, nor always, and from necessity, but as may happen at any time to be casual. For example, cold might be prevalent when the sun is in Canis, but a thing of this sort would take place neither as always from necessity, nor as for the most part, but might, nevertheless, accidentally occur sometimes. Therefore, does that constitute an accident which is produced, not always, nor from necessity, nor as for the most part. What indeed, then, an accident is, has been declared. But why there is not a science of a thing of this kind is evident. For every science is conversant about that which is an entity always, or as for the most part, but the accidental is not ranked amongst either of these. But it is evident that of what subsists according to accident, there are not causes and first principles of such a description as there are of that which is an entity that involves an essential subsistence. For if this be admitted, all things will be from necessity. For if on the supposition of this particular thing being a consequence of that particular entity, but this a result from that, and if this subsists not from its being casual, but from necessity will be likewise that of which this was the cause, until that which is denominated the last effect. This, however, subsisted according to accident, so that all things will be from necessity, and the possibility for anything whatsoever casually to occur, and the existence of contingency, and the being generated, and the not being generated, will altogether be taken away from things that are being generated. For although a cause may be supposed not to be an entity, but that also which is being generated, the same consequences will ensue, for everything will be generated from necessity. For, to give an instance, tomorrow's eclipse will take place if this particular thing may happen, and this will happen if something else does, and this last if something else ensues, and doubtless in this manner on the supposition that a portion of duration be taken away from that definite time, which may be measured from the present moment until tomorrow, one will ultimately arrive at that which is in being. Wherefore, since this is the case, all things that are subsequent to this will be from necessity. Wherefore will it be the case that all things will be generated from necessity. As regards, however, that which is entity in reality, and not according to accident, one kind indeed is that which is contained in the comprehension of the intellect, and is a passive condition in this. Wherefore, respecting that which constitutes entity in this way, first principles are not investigated. But respecting that which is an entity external to this, and possessing a separable subsistence, they are. And that which subsists according to accident is not necessary, but indefinite. Now, I mean what subsists according to what is accidental, as in a less degree, but the causes of a thing of this sort are inordinate and infinite. But that on account of which a thing subsists, that is, the final cause, is classified amongst those things that are generated by nature, or that spring from intellect. It is chance, however, that generates them, when any of these may be generated according to accident. For, in like manner, just as also entity constitutes in one respect that which is essential, but in another that which subsists according to accident, so also is it the case with a cause. But chance is a cause according to accident in those things that are being generated in accordance with free will, for the sake of something. Wherefore, chance and intellect are conversant about the same object, for free will is not devoid of a connexion with intellect. The causes, however, are indefinite, from which might be generated that which arises from chance. Wherefore, obscure to human calculation is chance, even as a cause subsisting according to accident, but, absolutely considered, such is not a cause of anything, and chance is good and evil when what is good or worthless may happen to be the result. But mischance and misfortune are conversant about the magnitude of these. But since nothing that subsists according to accident is antecedent to those things that possess an essential subsistence, neither then are causes so. If then chance, or even spontaneity, be a cause of the firmament, prior as a cause will be mind and nature. Chapter 9. Now, one thing subsists in energy only, but another subsists in capacity, and a third in capacity and energy. And of these, one constitutes an entity, but the other a quantity, and the third something else of the rest of the categories. There is not, however, any motion beside the things themselves, for the change invariably takes place in accordance with the categories of entity. But in the case of these, there is not anything that is common, nor is there a thing of this sort in a single category. Everything, however, subsists in all things in a twofold manner, as, for instance, this particular thing, for this is the form of it, but that is its privation. And according to quality, one thing is white, but another black, and according to quantity, one is perfect, whereas the other imperfect, and according to motion, this tends upwards and that downwards, or the one is light, but the other heavy. Wherefore, there are as many species of motion and of change as there are of entity. But on account of there being a division in each genus, of the one into potentiality or capacity, of the other, however, into actuality, I style energy the motion of that which subsists in potentiality, so far forth as it does subsist in potentiality. And that we make a true assertion in this point is evident from the following circumstance. For when a material is fit for being built, so far forth as it is a thing of this sort, we say that this very thing subsists in energy, so far forth as it is being built, and this constitutes the structure or the mode of building. In like manner stands the case with disciplinary learning, healing and rolling, walking, leaping, growing old, advancing towards a state of maturity. It happens, however, that a thing is in motion when the actuality itself may exist, and when it is a thing neither antecedent nor subsequent to this. Therefore, entelecheia, or actuality, belonging to that which subsists in capacity, when subsisting in actuality it energizes, either as that which it is, or something else, so far forth as it is movable. This constitutes motion. Now, I mean by the expression, so far forth, a subsistence whose mode I would illustrate as follows. For brass is a statue in capacity, but, nevertheless, actuality of the brass, so far forth as it is brass, does not constitute motion. For it is not the same thing, the belonging to brass and to a certain capacity, since if it were the same, absolutely speaking, according to definition, the entelecheia, or actuality of the brass, would amount to a certain motion. It is not, however, the same. And this statement is evident as regards contraries, for the capacity of being in sound health and the capacity of being indisposed are not the same, for in such a case would the actual conditions of health and sickness be the same. But the subject that is capable of being made both healthy and diseased, whether it be moisture or whether it be blood, is one and the same thing. Since, however, the being of a thing is not the same with the being of a certain capacity, in the same way as neither is colour the same with what is visible, so the entelecheia, or actuality of that which is potential, so far forth as it is a thing that is potential, constitutes motion. That indeed, therefore, motion actually exists, and that a thing happens to be moved at the same time with its being itself actuality, and that it is a thing that is neither antecedent nor subsequent to this, is evident. For everything admits of subsisting at one time in energy, but at another time not in this state, as, for example, that which is fit for being built, so far forth as it is fit for being built, and the energy of that which is fit for being built, so far forth as it is fit for being built, constitute the mode or act of building. For the energy of this amounts either to the mode of building, or the house built. But when the house may be finished, that is, when it constitutes the energy, it will no longer be a thing that is fit for being built. But, on the other hand, that which is fit for being built is actually built. It is necessary, then, that the mode or act of building amount to energy, but the mode or act of building amounts likewise to a certain motion, and the same reasoning holds good in the case of other motions. Now, that these assertions have been made correctly is evident from the statements which other philosophers have from time to time put forward in regard to motion, as also from the fact of its not being an easy matter to frame a definition of it in a different manner from the foregoing. For neither is one able to set it down as being contained in another genus, and it is evident from what these speculators say on the subject, for some of them, indeed, regard it as equivalent with diversity, and inequality, and nonentity, and yet not one of these necessarily should have motion imparted to it. But neither does there exist change or mutation into these either, nor from things of this kind more than from such as are opposed. But a cause of their setting down motion amongst things of this kind is as follows: because motion appears with them as something that is indefinite. Now, the first principles of a different coordinate series, from the fact of their being privative, are indefinite, for not one of these is either this particular thing, or any other of the rest of the categories. But a cause of this view of motion, I mean of its appearing to be a thing that is indefinite, results from the fact that it is not possible to set it down under the category of the potentiality of entities, or under that of their energy or activity, for neither that which involves a capacity of being quantity has motion imparted to it necessarily, nor that which subsists as quantity in energy. And motion appears to amount to a certain energy or activity, no doubt. But an energy or activity which is imperfect, and a cause of this is the following: that which is potential, to which the energy belongs, is itself imperfect, and on this account it would be difficult, as regards this, to apprehend what it is, for it must necessarily be classed either into privation, or into capacity, or into simple energy, and not one of these does it appear admissible that motion should be considered. Wherefore it remains that it be what it has been declared to be, namely, both an energy or activity, and yet not such an energy as has been mentioned, for this would be an energy difficult to discern indeed, but nevertheless one which it is admissible should subsist. And that motion is to be found in that which is capable of being moved is evident. For the actuality of this lies under the influence of that which is capable of being moved, and the energy of that which is movable is not different from this, for it is necessary, surely, that there should subsist actuality in both. For a thing is movable in respect of its involving a capability of having motion impressed upon it, and that which imparts motion does so from energy or activity. But it thus acts from this energy in regard of that which is adapted for motion. Wherefore, in like manner, there resides one energy in both, just as from 1 to 2 is the same interval as from 2 to 1. And in regard of ascent and descent, the case is the same, but the essence in this instance is not one. And the same remark holds good, in like manner, with the power that imparts motion, and that which has motion impressed upon it thereby. End of Chapter 9 of Book 10. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards. Of Book 10 of Metaphysics by Aristotle, translated by John McMahon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Chapter 10. But the infinite either is that which it is impossible to pass through, in respect of its not being adapted by nature to be permeated in the same way as the voice is invisible, or it is that which possesses a passage without an end, or that which is scarcely so, or that which by nature is adapted to have, but has not a passage or termination. Further, a thing is infinite from subsisting by addition, or subtraction, or both. It is indeed possible, therefore, that the infinite should constitute a certain entity that involves a separable subsistence, but that it is cognizant by sense is not possible. For if it constitutes neither magnitude nor multitude, and if the infinite be a substance, and not an accident of this, it will be indivisible. For that which is divisible amounts either to magnitude or multitude. But if it be indivisible, it will not be infinite, unless in the same way as the voice is invisible. They do not, however, say so, nor do we inquire into the subject, but we consider it as a thing without any passage, or in other words, impermeable. Further, let me ask, how is it possible that what is essentially infinite should exist, unless there should happen to subsist number and magnitude, of which, too, the infinite is a passive condition? Moreover, if the infinite subsists according to accident, it would not constitute an element of entities, as far forth as it is a thing that is infinite, in the same manner as neither is that which is invisible an element of speech, although the voice is invisible. And that it is not possible for the infinite to subsist in energy is evident, for any part whatsoever of itself that is assumed will be infinite. For the being of the infinite and a thing which is infinite are the same, if the infinite be substance, and not that which is predicated of a subject. Wherefore it is either indivisible, or divisible in a progression ad infinitum, if it be made up of parts that are or may be divisible. That many infinites, however, should be the same thing is impossible. For as air is a part of air, so infinite is a part of that which is infinite, if it is substance and a first principle. The infinite, then, is devoid of parts, and indivisible. But it is impossible that an entity that subsists in actuality should be infinite, for it must needs constitute quantity. It subsists, then, according to accident. But if this be the case, it has been declared that it is not possible that it should be a first principle. But this must be affirmed of that to which it happens that number or evenness should be such. The investigation, therefore, is itself universal. That the infinite, however, does not subsist in things that are cognizant by sense is evident from the following circumstances. For, on the supposition that the definition of body amounts to that which is bounded by surfaces, body would not be infinite, either that which is cognizable by sense, or by the understanding. Nor will it be number as actually separated and infinite, for number is that which is numerable, or which involves number. That the infinite, however, cannot subsist in things cognizant to the senses, regarded in a physical point of view, is evident from these following reasons. For neither is it possible that it should be a composite nature, nor one which is simple. For if you admit that it is a composite nature, it will not be a body if the elements are limited in multitude. For it is requisite that we should equalize the contraries, and that one of them should not be infinite. For if in any degree whatsoever the potentiality of the other body fails, the finite will be corrupted by the infinite body. But it is impossible that each of the elements should be infinite. For body is that which in every direction involves an interval, but that which is infinite is that which involves an interval without end. Wherefore, if there is in existence an infinite body, it will be infinite in every direction. Neither, however, can there be in existence one infinite simple body, nor, as certain philosophers would lay down, can it subsist as different from, or independent of, the elements from whence they generate these things. For there is not in existence a body of this description beside the elements, for all those things of which they are compounded are resolved into these. This, however, does not appear to subsist beside the simple bodies, either fire or any other of the elements. For without some one of them being infinite, it is impossible that the universe, if it may be finite, should either be or be generated from some one of the elements, as Heraclitus says that all things were originally fire. And there is the same mode of reasoning also in the case of unity, the existence of which natural philosophers introduce besides the elements. For everything undergoes a change from its contrary, as from heat into cold. Further, a body cognizant by the senses is situated in a certain place, and there is the same place of the whole as of the part, of the earth, for instance, as of one of its clods. Wherefore, if the infinite be of similar parts indeed, it will be immovable, or always will be impelled forwards. But this is impossible. For why, may I ask, should it be moved downwards in preference to upwards, or in any direction whatsoever? For instance, if it were a clod of earth, in what direction will this be moved? Or in what place will it remain at rest? For the place of the body naturally adapted to this will be infinite. Will it, then, comprise the entire place? And how will this be so? What, therefore, will be its place of rest and its motion? Or shall we say that it will remain at rest everywhere? It will not then be moved, or shall we say that it will be moved in every direction? It will not then stand still. If the universe, however, be of dissimilar parts, places likewise would be dissimilar, and in the first instance, no doubt, the body of the universe would not be one, save in respect of contact. In the next place, these things will be either finite or infinite in species. That they should be finite is not certainly then possible, for some indeed will be infinite, and some not so, on the supposition that the universe is infinite, for instance, fire or water, and a thing of this kind will be corruption to contraries. If, however, they are infinite and simple, both the places will be infinite, and infinite will be the elements. But if this is impossible, and the places be finite in number, the universe also must needs be finite. And in general, it is impossible that there can be an infinite body, and a place for bodies, if every body that is cognizant by the senses involves gravity or lightness. For it will have an impulse either towards the centre or upwards. It is impossible, however, that the infinite, either the whole or the half, or any part whatsoever, should undergo a passive state. For in what way would you make a division of it? Or of the infinite, how will there be one portion tending in a direction downwards, and the other in a direction upwards? Or how will this constitute the extremity, and that the centre? Further, every body that falls under the notice of the senses subsists in place, and there are 6 species of place. But it is impossible that these should subsist in a body that is infinite. And upon the whole, if it is impossible that place should be infinite, it is likewise impossible that body should be so. For that which subsists in place is somewhere, and this signifies a direction, either upwards or downwards, or some one of the rest of the categories, and each of these constitutes a certain limit. But the infinite is not the same in magnitude and motion, and duration, as if it were a certain single nature. But that which is subsequent is denominated according to that which is antecedent, as, for instance, motion is denominated according to, or conformably with, the magnitude in regard of which the motion, or the alteration, or the increase is brought about. Time, however, is reckoned or computed in consideration of motion. Chapter 11. Now, that which undergoes a change is changed partly indeed according to accident, as when we say the musician walks, and partly when a thing is said simply to be changed in respect of something belonging to this undergoing a change. For example, whatsoever things are changed according to parts. For the body is reduced to a sound state of health because the eye is restored to a healthy condition. Now, there is something which primarily is moved in itself or essentially, and this is that which may have motion impressed upon it from itself. And there is also something of the same sort in the case of that which imparts motion likewise. For one thing imparts motion according to accident, and another according to a portion, but a third essentially or of itself. And there is something that is the primary source of motion, and there is something that has motion impressed upon it. Further is there the time in which, and there is the place from which, and the direction towards which a thing is moved. But the forms and passive states and place into which are moved the things that are being moved themselves are immovable, as science and heat, but the heat does not constitute motion, yet the process of heating does. The change, however, that does not ensue according to accident does not reside in all things, but in contraries and media, and in contradiction, but a reliance upon this statement may be drawn from induction. Now, that which undergoes a change is changed either from a subject into a subject, or from that which is not a subject into a subject, or from a subject into a non-subject, or from a non-subject into a subject. But I mean by a subject that which is made manifest by affirmation. Wherefore, changes must needs be three in number, for that which is from a non-subject into a non-subject is not properly a change, for it subsists neither between contraries nor between contradiction, because there is not opposition in the case of a transition from a non-subject into a non-subject. The change indeed, therefore, from that which is a non-subject into a subject according to contradiction amounts to generation, and such a change, of course, when simply considered, is simple generation, and when it is partial generation. But the change from subject into that which is non-subject amounts to corruption, which, when it is simply so, is simple corruption, but when it is partial corruption. If, therefore, non-entity is predicated multifariously, and that according to composition or division does not admit of being put in motion, so neither can it be so with that according to capacity which is opposed to that which subsists simply. For a thing that is not white, or not good, nevertheless admits of being moved according to accident, for that which is not white may be a man. But this cannot by any means be the case with this particular thing which subsists simply, for it is impossible that non-entity should be moved, and if this be admitted, it is impossible also that generation amounts to motion, for non-entity would be produced if it did, for in such a case most especially would it be produced according to accident. Yet, nevertheless, it is true to assert of that which is generated simply that a non-entity has a subsistence. In like manner also stands the case with the being in a state of rest. And, doubtless, such are the difficulties that attend on this hypothesis, even on the supposition that everything that is being moved is in place, but what is a non-entity is not in place, for it would be somewhere. Hence, neither does corruption constitute motion, for motion or rest is a thing that is contrary to motion, but corruption is contrary to generation. Since, however, every motion amounts to a certain change, and there are three changes, as just now enumerated, and of these the changes that ensue according to generation and corruption are not motions, and these are those that subsist according to contradiction, it is necessary that the change from subject into subject should alone constitute motion. Subjects, however, are either contraries or media, and let privation be considered as a thing that is contrary, and it is made manifest by affirmation, for instance, that which is naked and toothless, and that which is black. Chapter 12. If, therefore, the categories are divided by substance, quality, place, action or passion, relation, quantity, there must needs subsist three motions of quality, quantity, and of place. But according to substance there does not subsist any motion on account of there being nothing contrary to substance, nor is there a motion of relation, for it is possible, when either of the relatives has not undergone a change, that a verification should take place in regard of the other, as having undergone no change. Wherefore the motion of these will subsist according to accident. Neither is there a motion of that which is active and passive, or of that which is the efficient cause of motion, and has motion impressed upon it, because there is not a motion of motion, nor a generation of generation, nor in general a change of a change. For in two ways is it possible that there be a motion of a motion: first, either as of a subject, for instance, as man is moved because from white he is changed into black. Wherefore, thus also is it with motion: either a thing is made warm or cold, or undergoes alteration in place or increase. This, however, is impossible, for the change does not amount to any of the subjects. Or, secondly, there may subsist a motion of motion, in respect of some different subject, from change being altered into a different form, as man is changed from sickness into health. Neither, however, is this possible except according to accident, for every motion constitutes a change from one thing into another, and in like manner the case stands with generation and corruption, except that those changes, I admit, that are wrought from things that are posed in this or that way are not motions. At the same time, then, is man changed from health into disease, and from this very change into a different one. It is therefore evident that, when a man shall have become indisposed, he shall undergo a change into a disease of some sort or other, for it is admissible for such to remain in a state of rest. And further, it is evident that he will not be changed into that state which is invariably casual, and that will amount to a change from something into something else, so that health will be an opposite motion, but from accident, as, for instance, one undergoes an alteration from memory into oblivion, because that wherein oblivion is inherent undergoes a change, sometimes into scientific knowledge, and sometimes into health. Further, will the progression advance on to infinity if there will subsist a change of a change, and a generation of a generation? Therefore also must there be the former, on the supposition that there is the latter. For instance, if the simple act of generation take place at any time, that also which is being generated simply has been produced. Wherefore, not as yet in existence would be that which is being produced simply, but something does exist that is being generated or produced, or which already has been generated. If, therefore, also this thing once was generated, for what reason was that not yet in existence which is being then generated? Since, however, as regards things that are infinite, there does not subsist anything that is primary, there will not be that which is first generated, and for this cause neither that which is in order consequential. Therefore, that any of these either should be generated, or be moved, or undergo any change is not possible. Further, contrary motion, and rest, and generation, and corruption will belong to the same subject. Wherefore, a thing that is being generated, when it may become that which is being generated, is then undergoing a process of corruption. For neither is it immediately corrupted as soon as it is generated, nor subsequently to this, for that must necessarily exist which is undergoing a process of corruption. Further, it is the case that matter ought to subsist under that which is being generated, and undergoing a change. Therefore, what matter will there subsist in like manner as an alterable body or soul? In this way also, anything that subsists on being produced constitutes either motion or generation. And further, what is that into which the thing is moved? For it is necessary that something amount to the motion of this particular thing from this particular thing into that, and yet that it should not be motion at all. How, let me ask then, is this to take place? For the generation of discipline does not amount to discipline, so neither is it true to say that there will subsist a generation of generation. Since, however, there is not in existence motion either of substance, or of relation, or of action and passion, it remains that there should subsist motion according to quality, and quantity, and place. For to each of these doth there belong contrariety. Now, I mean by motion according to quality, not that which is found in substance, for difference also constitutes quality, but that which is passive in accordance with which a thing is said to be passive, or to be devoid of passion. With regard, however, to that which is immovable, and that which, upon the whole, it is impossible should have motion impressed upon it, and that which with difficulty, in a long portion of duration, or slowly, commences its motion, and that which, having been by nature, no doubt, adapted for having motion imparted to it, yet does not possess the capacity or ability of being moved when it is naturally fitted for motion, both as to the place where, and the manner how, this is what I term merely a condition of rest amongst those things that are immovable. For rest is a thing that is contrary to motion. Wherefore, it would amount to a privation of that which is receptive or capable of motion, and things are said to be moved according to place at the same time as many as are to be found in one original locality. And those things are said to be moved separately as many as are to be found in a different place. And things are said to be in contact with each other, the extremities of which subsist together. And that is a medium into which that is fitted by nature first to proceed which is undergoing a change, before it arrives at that into which it is ultimately changed. I mean, what is uninterruptedly undergoing a change according to the constitution of nature. A thing is contrary in regard of place, which in a straight line is at the greatest distance possible, and a thing is successive between which, when it is after its first principle, either in position or form, or some other definite mode of subsistence, and that to which it is consequent, there subsists no intervening medium of things in the same genus. For instance, lines are successive to a line, or monads are successive to a monad, or a house to a house. There is no hindrance, however, to their subsisting any other medium between them, for that which is successive belongs to something in succession, and is something that is subsequent, for one is not successive to two, nor are the kalends to the nones. And a thing is coherent which, being successive, is in contact. Since, however, every change takes place in those things that are opposed, and these are contraries and contradiction, and since of contradiction there is nothing that is a medium, it is evident that in contraries there subsists a medium, and that which is continuous is that which has something of the nature of the coherent, or of that which is in a state of contact. And a thing is called continuous when the extremity of either of the parts by which they are in contact and in continuity may be one and the same. Wherefore it is evident that what is continuous is to be found amongst those things from which, as compounds, there subsists any one thing naturally adapted for being generated according to contact. And that what is successive ranks as what is primary is evident likewise. For everything that is successive does not subsist in a state of contact, but this is the case with what is successive on the supposition that what is continuous subsists in a state of contact. Even, however, though they should subsist in a state of contact, they yet by no means amount to that which is continuous. Those things, however, in which there is not found contact, there does not subsist natural coherence in. Wherefore a point is not the same thing with a monad, for indeed in points may be found contact, but this is not the case with monads, but these are successive to each other, and between points there may be found a certain medium, whereas we cannot discover any such between monads. End of chapter 12 and end of book 10. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards. Chapter 1 of Book 11 of Metaphysics by Aristotle, translated by John McMahon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Chapter 1. The present speculation is concerned about substance, for the first principles and causes of substances are under investigation. For both if the universe be as one whole, substance constitutes the earliest portion, and if things subsist in a consequent order, in this way likewise would substance be first, and next quality, then quantity. But at the same time, neither, so to say, are these simply considered entities, but qualities and motions, in the same manner even as that which is not whole, and that which is not straight. Therefore we say that these also are in existence, for instance, that such a thing is not white. Further still, no one of the others possesses a separable subsistence. And to the truth of this statement bear witness also, in reality, the philosophers of antiquity, for they from time to time have investigated into the first principles and elements and causes of substance. Those, to be sure, that are philosophers nowadays have in preference sought to establish universals as substances, for the genera are universals, which they say are first principles, and substances, rather on account of their examining them logically. The philosophers, however, of old regarded singulars as substances, for example, fire and earth, but not a common body. Now, substances are three in number. One, indeed, is cognizant by sense, the existence of which all acknowledge, and one part of this is eternal, and the other subject to decay, as plants and animals. But of the eternal portion of it, it is necessary that we should admit as elements either one or many. But another substance is immovable, and this, some say, involves a separable subsistence, amongst whom some make a division of it into two. Others, however, rank into one nature forms and mathematical entities, whereas others of these admit mathematical entities only as subsisting. The substances that are cognizant by sense belong then, of course, to the department of physical science, for they involve a connexion with motion, but the immovable substance belongs to a different science on the supposition that this possesses no first principle in common with the others. Chapter 2. Substance, cognizant by the senses, however, is susceptible of change. Now, on the supposition that change takes place from things that are opposed, or such as are media, and not from all things that are opposites, for the voice is not a thing that is white, but from that which is contrary, it is necessary that something also subsist capable of undergoing an alteration into contrariety, for contraries do not undergo a change. Further, does this no doubt continue permanent? That which is contrary, however, does not continue permanent, and hence doth there subsist a something third beside contraries, namely matter. If, therefore, changes are four in number, either according to quiddity, or according to quality, or quantity, or the place where, and if simple generation, indeed, and corruption be what subsist according to quiddity, and increase and diminution be what subsist according to quantity, and alteration be that according to passion, and motion be that according to place, allowing all this to be the case, the several changes would take place into contrarieties, I mean, such as are involved in singulars. Therefore, it is necessary that matter should undergo a change which can pass into both. Since entity, however, is twofold, everything which undergoes a change is changed from that which is an entity in capacity into that which is an entity in energy, as, for example, from what is white in capacity or potentiality into that which is white in energy. And, in like manner also, does the case stand with increase and diminution. Wherefore, not only according to accident is it possible that all things be generated from nonentity, but, likewise, from entity do all things derive their generation. I speak of what is an entity in capacity deriving its generation from a nonentity in energy or activity. And this is the unit of Anaxagoras, for it is better to maintain this than the tenet of certain speculators who are of opinion that all things subsist simultaneously, and it is tantamount to the philosophic dogma of mixture adopted by Empedocles and Anaximander, and resembles the theory of Democritus, viz. That all things subsisted in capacity simultaneously, and not in energy. Wherefore, in this case, they would touch upon matter, that is, the material cause. All things, however, involve matter as many as undergo a change, but entities involve different matter from one another, and of the things that are eternal, as many as are not generable, but movable by an orbital motion, possess matter, yet such matter as is not generable, but is merely moved from this place towards that. Now, one might raise the question from what sort of nonentity generation could arise, for nonentity subsists in a threefold way. If, therefore, there subsists aught in capacity, from this will generation subsist, yet, nevertheless, not from anything whatsoever without distinction, but one thing will be generated from another. Neither is it sufficient to say that all things subsist simultaneously. For entities differ in matter, since why would things infinite in number be generated, but not one thing? For the faculty of the human understanding is one. Wherefore, if likewise matter be one, that would have been generated also in energy, the matter even of which would subsist in capacity. Therefore, are there three causes, and three first principles, two indeed amounting to contrariety, of which one sort constitutes the formal principle and the species, and the second privation, but the third cause is matter. Chapter 3. After these inquiries, there remains for us to make our readers aware that neither matter nor form is generated. Now, I speak thus of the extremities of things. For everything that undergoes any change is changed both by something and into something. By something, of course, I mean that which is the first imparter of motion, and of something, that is, matter, and that into which the thing is changed, this is the form. Therefore, they go on in a progression to infinity, if not only the brass becomes spherical, but also the spherical, or the brass, is generated. Therefore must we sooner or later come to a standstill in the series. After these inquiries, we must show how that each substance is generated from one synonymous with itself. For those things that are being generated by nature, as well as other things, are substances. For things are produced either by art, or nature, or chance, or spontaneity. Art, indeed, therefore, constitutes a first principle which subsists in another subject, whereas nature constitutes a first principle which subsists in the thing itself. For man begets man, and the remaining causes are the privations of these. Substances, likewise, are three in number, and one of these is matter, which is this certain particular thing in consequence of its appearance as such. For as many things as are one by contact, and not by cohesion, constitute matter, and a subject. But another of these substances is nature, which likewise is this certain particular thing, and into nature is there the transition of a certain habit. Further, the third substance is that which subsists from these, and is ranked as a singular, for example, Socrates, or Callias. As regards some things, therefore, this certain particular thing involves no subsistence independent of a composite substance, as the form of a house, unless art constitutes this form. Neither is there any generation and corruption of these, but after a different manner they are, and are not, both the house itself, which is unconnected with matter, and health, and everything that is produced according to art. But if forms subsist, they subsist in the case of those things that are generated by nature. Wherefore, doubtless, not injudiciously affirmed Plato that forms belong to those things as many as involve a natural subsistence, on the supposition of the existence of forms different from, or independent of, these, as, for example, fire, flesh, the head, and so forth. For all these things are matter, and belong to substance especially, I mean such a description of matter as is ultimate. Some causes, therefore, that are those that impart motion, subsist as entities that have been previously generated, whereas other causes, which subsist as the formal principle, are simultaneously generated with their results. For when a man is in sound health, then also is there present with him sound health, and the form of the brazen sphere subsists simultaneously with the brazen sphere. And whether also there remains anything subsequently to the separation of form from the subject of form, we must examine, for in the case of some forms there is no hindrance to this taking place, as if soul were a thing of this description. Not, to be sure, every soul, but the understanding. For that this should be so with every soul is not, perhaps, a thing that is possible. It is evident, therefore, that there is no necessity that, on account of these at least, ideas should have an existence. For man begets man, the singular begets a certain individual. And in like manner does the case stand with the arts, for the medicinal art is the formal principle of health. Chapter 4. And as regards causes and first principles, in a manner are they different according as they belong to different things, and in a manner this is not the case. Supposing one to express himself universally, and according to analogy, the causes and first principles of all things will be the same. For one might raise the question as to whether the first principles and elements of substances, and of things which subsist as relatives, are different or the same. and, therefore, in like manner is it the case with each of the categories. But it would be absurd if there were the same principles and elements of all things. For from the same things will relatives derive their subsistence as well as substance. What, therefore, will this be? For, besides substance and the rest of the things that are predicated, there is nothing that is in common. Prior, however, is the element to those things of which it is an element. But, assuredly, neither is substance an element of relatives, nor is any of these an element of substance. Further, how is it admissible that there should be the same elements of all things? For none of the elements can be the same with that which is a composite nature of the elements, as, for instance, neither B nor A can be the same with B A. Neither, therefore, is it possible that any one element of those natures that are intelligible, as, for example, unity or entity, can be the element of all things, for these are present with each of the compound natures likewise. No one of them, therefore, will have a subsistence either as substance or relation, but it will be a thing expedient, however, that they should subsist in some form or other. The elements, then, of all things are not the same. Or, shall we say, just as we have already affirmed, that in one way this is the case, and in another that it is not, as perhaps in regard of sensible bodies, that which is hot subsists in one way as form, and after another mode that which is cold subsists as the privation thereof. But matter subsists as that which primarily and essentially constitutes both of these in capacity. Substances, however, are both these and such as consist of those things of which there are the first principles. Or, if any one thing is generated from what is hot and from what is cold, as flesh or bone, still that which is produced from thence must needs be different from these. The first principles and elements of these, I admit, then, are the same, yet there are different elements of different things. And, without doubt, we cannot say that the case stands in this way with all things, but analogically are the elements and first principles of all things the same, just as if one should say that there are three first principles in existence, namely form, and privation, and matter. Each of these, however, is different according as it is conversant about every genus, as in colour, white, black, surface, light, darkness, air, and from these emerge forth day and night. Since, however, not only things that are inherent are causes, but also causes of things that are external, as, for example, in the case of what imparts motion, it is evident that a first principle is a different thing from an element, yet both are causes, and into these is a first principle divided. But what subsists as that which imparts motion or rest constitutes a certain first principle and substance. Wherefore, there are in existence three elements indeed, according to analogy, but four causes and first principles, and a different cause subsists where the subject is different, and the first cause constitutes, as it were, that which imparts motion, and is different according as the subject is different. Thus, health is as form, disease as privation, body as matter. That which imparts motion is the medicinal art. Again, a house is as form, this certain sort of confusion as privation, the bricks are as matter, and that which imparts motion or the efficient cause is the builder's art. And into these, therefore, is a first principle divided. But since that which imparts motion in physical or natural things is a man, and in things springing from the understanding form, or the contrary, in one respect would there be three causes, and in another four. For the medicinal art constitutes in a manner health, and the building art the form of the house, and man begets man. Further, beside these, as that which is the first of all things is that which imparts motion, or is the efficient cause, to all things. Chapter 5. And since some things involve a separable subsistence, and some do not involve a separable subsistence, the former are substances, and on this account these are the causes of all things, because the passive states and motions of things do not involve a subsistence independent of substances. In the next place, perhaps, will these constitute soul and body, or understanding and appetite and body. Moreover, in another manner, analogically, are first principles the same. For example, take the instances of energy and capacity. These, however, are both different according as the subjects of them are different, and they subsist in different ways. For in certain bodies the same thing subsists sometimes in energy, and sometimes in capacity, as wine, or flesh, or a man. But also do these fall under the category of the causes above enumerated, for form constitutes an energy, no doubt, if it be that which has a separable subsistence, and which is compounded from both, and this is the case with privation, for instance, darkness, or a creature that is sick. But matter subsists in capacity, for this is that which is endued with the capability of becoming both. But after another mode do those things differ in energy and capacity of which the matter is not the same, and of which the form is not the same, but different, as a cause of man are both the elements fire and earth, as matter, and his proper form, and if there is anything else extrinsic, I mean such as his father, and beside these the sun, and the oblique circle, which constitute neither matter, nor form, nor privation, nor are of the same species, but are motive natures. And, further, it is expedient for us to perceive that as regards causes it is possible to enumerate some that are universal, and some that are not. Therefore, the original first principles of all things are that which subsists in energy as this first thing, and something else which subsists in potentiality. Those indeed, therefore, that are universals have not any subsistence, for the singular constitutes a first principle of singulars. For man, to be sure, is the principle of universal man, yet there is no universal man. But Peleus is the cause of Achilles, and your father of you, and this particular letter, B, is the cause of this syllable, B-A, and in short, B of B-A absolutely. In the next place, the forms of substances are first principles, but there are different causes and elements of different things, as has been declared. Thus, of the things that are not contained in the same genus, such as colours, sounds, substances, quantity, the elements are not the same, except analogically. The causes likewise of those things that are contained in the same species are different, but they are not different in species. But because the matter of singulars is a thing that is different, both your matter and form, and that which imparts motion, and the species, differ in number from mine, though, according to the formal principle of the universal, they are the same. Therefore, as to the inquiry what are first principles or elements of substances, and relations, and qualities, as to whether they are the same or different, it is evident that, if they are predicated multifariously, there are the same principles and elements belonging to everything; but if they are divided, there are not the same, but different first principles of everything, unless that also, in a certain respect, there are the same principles of all things. Thus they are the same analogically, I admit, because there is matter, form, privation, that which imparts motion, and in that way the causes of substances are as the causes of all things, because, on the supposition of substances being destroyed, all things are destroyed. Further, that which is first subsists in actuality, and in this way are these primaries different, as many as are contraries, seeing that they neither are predicated as genera, nor denominated multifariously. Further, likewise, are there different kinds of matter that are styled causes. What, therefore, the first principles of sensibles are, and what sort they are, and after what mode they are the same, and after what mode they are different, all this has been declared. Chapter 6. But since there have appeared three substances, two indeed that are natural or physical, and one which is immovable, regarding this immovable substance, we must endeavour to establish that it is necessary that it should constitute a certain eternal substance, one which is immovable. For the first of entities are substances, and if we suppose all of them to be corruptible, all things are corruptible. It is impossible, however, that in such a case motion should be either generated, or that it should be corrupted, for it was always in existence. Nor is this possible with duration, for it is not possible that there can be that which is prior and subsequent, on the supposition that time or duration has no existence. And motion, then, in this way is continuous, as also duration, for duration either is the same as motion, or it is a certain passive condition of motion. But there is not any motion that is continuous, save that which is local or topical, and to this belongs the motion that is circular. But, doubtless, if there is anything that is fit for being moved, or that is productive, but not anything that energizes, in this case motion has no existence. For it is admissible that what involves capacity should not energize. There would then be no advantage gained, not even if we could make substances eternal, as those do who constitute as such the forms or ideas, unless there will be inherent some first principle capable of working a change. Therefore, neither would this be competent for such, nor would there be any other substance different from, or independent of, the forms. For, on the supposition that it will not energize, there will be no motion in existence. Further, neither will this be the case if the substance will energize, but if the substance thereof constitutes capacity. For there will not be in existence a perpetual motion, for it is possible that that which subsists in capacity should not exist. It is therefore necessary that there should be a first principle of this kind, whereof the substance constitutes an energy. Further, therefore, it is necessary that these substances do not involve a connexion with matter. For it is requisite that they should be eternal, if, in sooth, there is also at least anything else that is everlasting. It is then in energy that they subsist, although this involves a matter of doubt, for it appears to be the case that what energizes should subsist entirely in a state of potentiality, but that everything that is endued with capacity should not altogether energize. Wherefore, we may assume that potentiality is a thing that is antecedent to energy. But, surely, if this be the case, no one of the entities will be in existence, for it is possible that a thing possess a capacity of existence, but that yet it should not be in existence. If the case, however, stands as the theologians affirm, I mean, those who are for generating all things from night, or as the natural philosophers, who say that all things subsisted simultaneously, the same impossibility will ensue. For how, let me ask, will matter be put in motion if nothing that subsists in energy will be a cause? For the matter of a house, at least, will not itself move itself, but the builder's art will. Nor does the menstrual blood move itself, nor earth, but seeds, and human seed. Wherefore some have recourse to an energy that is always in action, as Leucippus and Plato, for they maintain that motion is always in existence. But why, and in what way, they do not state, nor how this is the case, nor do they assign the cause of this perpetuity of motion. For nothing is put in motion at random, but it is necessary that there be something always in subsistence, as now indeed one thing is by nature moved in this way, and again is moved by force, either by mind or something else, after a different manner. Then what sort is the first motion? For this inevitably differs as much as possible. But certainly neither is it possible for Plato, at least, to call that a first principle which imparts motion to itself, and which he sometimes considers to be a first principle. For subsequent to, and yet coincident with, the heaven is the soul, as he says. Therefore the supposition of the priority of potentiality to energy is in a manner a correct one, but in a manner is not so. And how this is correct has been declared. But that energy may be a thing that is antecedent to potentiality, Anaxagoras testifies, for the understanding subsists in energy. And Empedocles in his theory about harmony and discord, and this is confirmed in the assertion of certain philosophers as to the existence of perpetual motion, as Leucippus. Wherefore not in an infinite time did chaos or night subsist, but the same things continually were in existence as are in existence at present, either in a revolutionary system or otherwise. On the supposition that energy is a thing that is antecedent to potentiality. Supposing a thing, therefore, to be the same continually in a revolutionary system, it is necessary that something always should remain energizing in like manner. But if there is likely to ensue generation and corruption, it is necessary that there be something else which continually energizes, at one time in one way, and at another in another. It is necessary, then, that it energizes in this way, no doubt, essentially, or from itself, but in a different way, according to something else. It must in this case energize, either according to something that is different, or according to what is primary or original. It is therefore necessary that it energize according to this, for again is that a cause of energy both to this and to that other. Wherefore that which is primary is superior as a cause, for that likewise was a cause of a thing subsisting continually after a similar manner, and something else would be the cause of the subsistence of energy in a different manner, but of its subsistence always in a different manner manifestly would both be a cause. Therefore are motions also in this manner disposed. Why, therefore, must we go in search of other first principles? End of chapter 6 of book 11. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.